Hello again, everybody. The other week, I did revenue forecasting in the online forum for hoteliers, and I also did a brief idea of ways of how the cash flow forecast needs to work. So I thought I'd share that with you today. So obviously the cash flow forecast, the most important thing is it needs to be based on a good revenue forecast. If you're using a budget, which actually is nowhere near what you're actually expecting to come in, you're not going to get a good cash flow forecast. And if you haven't got a good cash flow forecast of any sort, then you're not going to get good operation. I touched on the revenue forecasting in a previous video. So please, if you haven't seen it, do go back to it, because it's so important to get your revenue forecasting, especially now with COVID. You just need to be on that pulse constantly, predicting where your revenue is going to be to help grow your business and to help plan for your cash flow. So on a point of view of cash flow, as I say, the revenue is the one that guides it all, the one that gears it all. And there is a relationship between, obviously, a cash flow for this month will be deposits for the future, sales ledger payments or receipts for a previous month's, and your cash and credit cards for the people who are in your hotel in this month. And although every hotel is different, that relationship probably won't be the same for your hotel as another hotel. You will learn that for your hotel, there is quite a strong relationship going forward for every month to be sort of the same sort of spread of those payments. And that will help you to make an assumption that will drive your cash flow. Obviously, the other area that's important with the cash flow is that it includes your VAT. And that VAT later will have to be paid to the government, like less supplier VAT. So it's not just the money that you've got in your forecast. And at the moment, obviously, we've got other sources of income. We've got grants like the furlough scheme coming in, which need to be taken into account. So first of all, with the cost side of things, with the outflow, I mean, payroll, always make sure that any variable payroll is calculated based on your units sold, not your revenue. Your number of rooms sold will all cost roughly the same amount to clean them. But whether you've taken £100 for that room or £200. And so to get a good idea of what cash flow is going to go out for that payroll, you need to base it on the number of rooms. And likewise with a restaurant, unless you're running with a restaurant that's virtually empty, your restaurant figures will be based more on the number of people you expect to serve than the actual revenue you expect to take. So always bear that in mind. And finally, on payroll, bear in mind that what you pay out this month will be the net wages for this month, and the HMRC obligation you had from last month. So that may vary the figures compared to what your actual payroll total gross is coming out at. Next, suppliers need to be broken down into vatable and non-vatable. And again, when you're looking at supplier costs for your cash flow, base it on actual productive figures, base it on the number of rooms sold, base it on the number of covers, because those figures again will be more likely to be constant than the revenue you're gaining from those covers. The only one where I'd say would be different is obviously commission on room bookings, where you would base a percentage of your revenue, and that tends to be fairly constant as well across the months. Most places have a certain dependency on the OTAs, and if not, then you'll soon learn which months have more dependency and less dependency, and that will obviously affect your commission payments, and you can build that into future forecast. It's like revenue forecasting. Cash flow forecasting is a learning process. It's not something you can just whip together in 1 minute and that's it. You will grow to learn the intricacies. And once you learn those, it would be much easier to then forecast ahead at where your cash flow is. Another point, obviously, with those suppliers is that they do have VAT on top, which is an outgoing in excess of what you would have in your P&L. Yeah. But then again, there are other payments which aren't VATable. And it not only affects it because there's no VAT, but also those payments may well be a one-off in a year. Although your assurance will be split, prepaid over your P&L over 12 months, you probably may have to spend it all in 1 month. And again, the rates usually are on a 10-month basis. So there'll be 2 months where you actually have a bit of slack there. And all these built into your cash flow forecast will give you a better idea of where you're going. Yeah. Finally, obviously, as I said, the VAT, you have to pay your dues to the government. And those VAT calculations are based on 3 months and paid 2 months later. So you may well be paying out VAT in the autumn months where you haven't got as much revenue. That's from the summer months where you were taking a lot of revenue and taking a lot of VAT money. So this is why having a good cash flow forecast is so important, because it'll help you to look ahead to those times and just to make sure that you don't put your business in difficulty when it's not necessary. So I hope you've learned something from that. It's not telling you how to put together a whole cash flow, but I think it's giving the basics of what makes a cash flow based on a P&L. And most of the figures that I've just been talking about in that presentation will be there in your P&L. You'll know a rough idea of all your variable costs per cover, your variable costs per room. You'll know where your fixed costs are, both in operations and non-operations. And so from those, you can put them into your cash flow and just build a very clear idea of your cash flow needs for the future months. Then you'll have to figure out how you're going to raise money if necessary to cover that. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this. I'll possibly be back with another presentation later on. See you. Thank you. Bye.